Gravity is the force that attracts a body toward the center of the earth, or toward any physical object containing mass. In the case of Steph Curry, he is the force that attracts several defenders toward him on any given possession. Recently, LeBron James came out and said that Steph Curry is most dangerous without the basketball in his hands. And so that begs the question, why is one of the greatest minds and obviously greatest players to ever play the game saying such a statement with this kind of fear and PTSD, so to speak? It's because it's absolutely true. Just looking at the film, Steph Curry's gravity is truly what separates him from the rest of the NBA. When you look at guys like Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard, James Harden in his prime, they're all obviously unbelievably elite with the basketball in their hands. And Steph, what makes Steph so great is he's able to match and even exceed those guys in terms of creating plays out of the pick and roll, maybe creating shots for themselves or directly passing it to other people for an assist. The difference between the guys that I mentioned earlier and Steph, however, is that when Harden, Dame, Kyrie, and Luka don't have the ball in their hands, they're typically caught ball watching. And for those that are not aware, what that means is when they're not dribbling the basketball and not controlling the offense, they'll either stand in the corner or one pass away on the wing and kind of just wait and watch the ball and see ultimately what unfolds. And why that's potentially an issue is because it's a lot easier to guard, right? But with Steph, on the other hand, he is constantly moving. He has the movement shooter ability of a Richard Hamilton back in the day, who always came off the pin down for a mid-range jumper, or a Klay Thompson, his former running mate, obviously, and Ray Allen, the guys that are constantly moving. It's like he has the modern day point guard ability, who's more of a heliocentric offense, but has the specialty to move without the basketball like a prime two guard in their heyday. And what that does is it creates so much confusion for the defense. LeBron said on the podcast Mind the Game with Steve Nash, and Steph was a guest as well, that players just have this natural inclination to always watch where the basketball is. And rightfully so. Ultimately, you want to stop the basketball. But what this doesn't account for is that when Steph is moving without the basketball and everyone's pointing their eyes towards the basketball, any split second that they let go of Steph is an opportunity for Steph to come out of a pin down or a movement across the baseline and ultimately have a wide open three, or a slip for one of his teammates that's ultimately setting a screen. And with a guy like Draymond Green on their roster, who in my opinion is criminally underrated, not only as an all-time defender, but as one of the greatest playmakers in our generation, his ability to find players both slipping towards the basket, creating 4-on-3 advantages on the backside, and or finding Curry on the perimeter is just, it's next level. This kind of gravity and force that all these defenders are kind of going towards Steph and leaving lanes open for his teammates, it's also showing up in statistics. Ben Taylor of Thinking Basketball recently uploaded a video regarding Steph's gravity, and one of the key takeaways I had was impact movement shooters have on percentage of rim attempts from their own team and the field goal percentage of those attempts. So, throughout the course of a game, a team takes a certain amount of their shots at the rim. Rim shots, for those of you that are unaware, are one of the more efficient shots in basketball, if not the most efficient shot. Free throws and rim shots. Most NBA players, coaches, they're all aware of that. And so when you look at movement shooters, a consistent theme occurs. There's always an increase in the team's rim attempts when they're on the floor and their efficiency. And so when you look at guys like Ray Allen, Kyle Korver, Klay Thompson, some of the greatest movement shooters of all time, they have this attention that defenses have to key in on, which leads to more rim attempts. And so you see a natural increase ranging from 6 to 10% of teams attempting more rim shots. And you also see an increase in efficiency from around 2 to 4%. With Steph Curry, on the other hand, that number is nearly 20%. 20% more rim attempts when he's on the floor over a 4-year period. Without Klay and Durant in a 4-year period with sizable minutes, Steph Curry is creating 20% more rim attempts and a 5 to 6% increase in efficiency. Rim attempts are, let's just say 60% of those times they go in, right? Just because of how much of an easier shot it is. So even if the percentage doesn't go up in terms of the efficiency, the mere fact that increasing the number of rim attempts is obviously an incredible plus for the offense. And the fact that Steph doubles every other elite all-time great movement shooter speaks volume on his gravity. Obviously, some of that is due to Steph Curry's incredible passing ability and his bounce passes, over the head passes, but a lot of that comes down to, and especially if you watch the film, watch what happens when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. How he's constantly moving, how defenses are constantly following him, and look at the lanes that creates. Out of the pinch post, out of high pick and roll, Steph setting the screen, defenses having to come to him, opening up lanes for Draymond to either drive for a layup or kick out to another shooter. It's absolutely incredible what Steph Curry can do based on his gravitational force. And so that leads me to my next kind of talking point in this discussion, is that gravity comes in many shapes and sizes. At the end of the day, every single player in the NBA has some sort of gravity, right? You simply just can't leave NBA players open, whether it's a wide open three-pointer or a wide open dunk in the dunker spot, right? Even if the guy can't shoot, NBA players have the ability to make layups. So in that sense, every NBA player has a level of gravity. And what makes it unique is that gravity comes, like I said, in all shapes and sizes and different schemes. For example, a Nikola Jokic, his gravity is kind of the opposite of what Steph Curry's is, right? Like Steph, he has all these defenders following him around at all times, whereas Nikola Jokic, no one wants to help and double team Jokic. So the gravitational force is towards his teammates, because they know if one person helps, Jokic is one of the greatest passers the game has ever seen. He is going to find a cutter, he's going to find a three-point shooter, no matter what, 10 times out of 10. And so what this allows and opens up for Jokic and his team ultimately is his ability to go one-on-one and have favorable post matchups. I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, but Jokic has been one of the more efficient post players in the NBA by far. And it's simply because the lack of double teams allow him to just go to work. His ability to, make hook shots, floaters, fadeaway jumpers, it's unparalleled. Imagine if you couldn't double team a Hakeem Olajuwon or a Tim Duncan, because their passing ability was just that great to the point where a double team would just lead to too many easy baskets. That's the kind of effect that Jokic has, and that's why he's consistently ahead of guys like Michael Jordan and LeBron James in terms of any advanced player efficiency rating that you look at. Gravity also comes in the form of rebounding, offensive rebounders in particular. If you look at guys like, even taking it way back, a Bill Russell, a Dennis Rodman, or even a modern day guy like Dwight Howard, Andre Drummond, those guys always require 2 to 3 bodies from the opposing defense to make sure that second chance opportunities aren't acquired, So teams always have to make sure that they're boxing them out, putting a body and making sure that they don't have the ability to get rebounds. And obviously they still end up doing that because of how talented they are. And especially in playoff games, sports in general are a game of inches, game of possessions, margins. Margins are everything at the highest level. And so these slight advantages that offensive rebounders have, guys like Curry create, Jokic, they can be the difference from winning a championship and being a second finalist. And so I say this all to conclude by trying to convey the point that hopefully this new understanding of gravity and what it means in an NBA context allows you guys, the viewer, to maybe watch the game in a different light, right? I like to think that, there's more to just a box score. Just because someone averages 25, 5, and 5 doesn't automatically make them a great player. Sure, to some extent they are probably a really good NBA player, but what separates a guy like player A that drops 25, 5, and 5, and player B that also drops 25, what separates those two individuals is ultimately how the defense game plays, right? If you look at Kobe Bryant and you compare his numbers from the past to players today, quite frankly, there's a handful of guys that are not really considered top 10 players that are producing some of Kobe's seasons, right? Obviously, Kobe had that one year where, in 05, 06, where he averaged 36 points per game, and that 35 points per game, and that was just a historic season. But if you look at some of Kobe's 25, 5, and 5 seasons, they're comparable to some guys in today's NBA, but the difference is that the gravitational, like what made Kobe so great was obviously his on-ball ability to score and his tough shot making, but also his ability to move without the basketball and the way that impacts defenses, right? So just because he has 25 and 5 and 5 and the other guy also has 25, whether it's justified or not, the way that coaches game plan for you has a significant impact on that player's value. And so I hope that gravity, this concept, opens up a new lens for watching basketball and looking beyond the box score and seeing those impacts that don't show up in the stat sheet, and how two different players with similar numbers can have vastly different impacts on the same sport. As always, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video. Peace.